my mom's on my father's mother's story.
So the chairs are that's what everyone stand out
Okay, I have 6:30 is the time, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started with a quick introduction of Dr. King for her presentation tonight. My name is Sarah McKinley. I am the supervisor here at the Carnegie Library branch of Muncie Public Library, which is also our local history and genealogy branch of the library. So we have our research collections for Delaware County family history here. I'm also the social media director for our partner for our program tonight, which is the East Central Indiana Genealogy Alliance, which some of you may be members of here tonight. The Genealogy Alliance serves 5 counties in East Central Indiana, and we try to provide free workshops for people in those counties, and we also film those programs and put them on our website so that members can view them if they can't make it to the program. So if you haven't become a member, we have our application is on the website at ECIGA.info. And of course, most public library programs are always free and open to the public, even without a membership, so great partnership here. Our guest speaker tonight is Dr. Ruby Kane. And everybody should have a handout, I hope. If you don't have one, just raise your hand, we'll get one to you. It has a great bio for Dr. Kane on here, and I'll just highlight a few things. Dr. Kane is an assistant professor and director of the MA degree programs in adult and community education program and in executive development for public service at Ball State University. She's also the director of It Is Well With My Soul, a community program focusing on racial healing via family and cultural history research, presentation, and publication. She also teaches an immersive learning graduate course in which the students research and present their family history. And it's been a pleasure for me to visit your class and to listen to those students' presentations. It's wonderful. Every year, there's presentations, you learn something new each time. Everybody presents their family history in their own unique way. So she has lots of experience in genealogy research, and we're happy to have her tonight to teach us how to maybe break through some of our own brick walls in our genealogy research. So welcome, Dr. Kane.
Stand here.
However you want to do it, I can help you with the projector.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy to be here tonight. I started my journey in ancestral research 23 years ago. I was LNG a few minutes ago, and I moved from California to Fort Wayne. And back then, the internet was not so friendly, so I searched on the browser and found out that it was a large genealogy center, and actually the second largest, I say the second largest collection of genealogy resources in the galaxy. And I just absolutely loved it. But I had purchased a copy of Family Tree Maker, and then back then it was standalone. Since then, Ancestry.com has bought it out. But I said, okay, I've got this software. I'm going to start researching my family history. And one of my cousins had done some research, and she had about 130 names. So I went to the library with absolutely no idea of what to do and how to do it. And the friendly people in the genealogy center, and as you know, all genealogists and all historians are very, very friendly. They're people. And they assisted me with how to start. And they, instead of going from me up, they asked me for my oldest relative. It was my second great-grandfather. And I was able to find him in the index. They had, back then, everything was, film, fiche, paper, and they had an index of the census. I found him there, and I found which roll it was, and I was able to locate him. So it was pretty exciting. And I've spent many a night in the genealogy center, closing the library. Only planning to be there for a couple hours, and then about 9 hours later, I'm still there. So I'm sure many of you can relate to that. So today, I'm just going to talk about, some of the things that I have done that are non-traditional. And we're going to start with an activity, a real quick activity. We're not going to do everybody because we have such a short period of time. And then my definition of non-traditional genealogy resources, and then we're going to talk about some strategies. So if we go to the next one, I would like to get 3 volunteers. Okay, stand up. 1, 2, one more. Okay, 3. Okay, so for my first volunteer in the maroon-like shirt, I want you to describe your first encounter with genealogy research and presentation. What intrigued you to get started?
I went to a reunion, and I met a distant cousin of mine who had done all kinds of research, and he had this huge tree posted on a poster board. Probably it was about 5 foot tall, and he had that posted on there. And then he had a book about this thick of part of our family on my dad's mother's side. And the poor guy had hand typed that whole book on a typewriter because he had no computer.
Right.
And I thought, my gosh, if he does that, surely I can do a little bit. And it just totally got me so involved with it. I loved it, yes.
Okay, thank you so much. And then number 2,
I started.
no, you have a different question.
Okay.
What motivated you to learn more about your ancestors?
My husband was the very last child. And so there were lots of girls in the family, but no boys. So the name was done, really. And so I got fascinated by doing that, and a couple other people were doing it. And I published a book 2 years ago, probably out of the
Congratulations, very nice, thank you. Okay, third question, what are your plans for your research? So you do the research, what do you plan to do with it?
Well,
Or have you done with it?
I do a lot of stuff on ancestry. I also set up a tree on family search. There are pros and cons to each one of them.
Oh, yeah.
Family search, I put in just a few people, and the first night I ever did it, I found myself all the way back to Rebecca Kemp in New England, which I had already learned about from a cousin in California, who I learned about through DNA. So I'm playing the DNA stuff, I'm playing that. If I could find things about orphan train riders, I'd do it. I have a grandfather that was an orphan train rider at Plymouth. And try to spend some time several times a week, if nothing else, on the internet, digging, looking at stuff. Tracking down my wife's father's decree of adoption, things like that.
Okay, well, thank you. Do those stories sound familiar to the rest of you? Definitely sound familiar to me. I moved here, or to Fort Wayne in '94, and we were having a family reunion in '96, and I wanted to collect our family history for '96. So in my mind, I'd be done in '96, right? And they enjoyed getting a copy of the family history in '96, and so they wanted another reunion. So we had a reunion in all places, Fort Wayne, Indiana, because that's where I live. Everybody came to us. And so I probably had more than double the family tree by the time in that 2-year span. And so I was thinking, okay, '98, I'll be done. Well, as you all know, you're never done. There are always more family members that you can find, and some of the resources that were not easily or readily available in '98, just come right up. If you use Ancestry.com, come up with a link. If you use another application, you'll get linked to it in a different type of way. Go to the next one. So our objectives for today is to define what I mean by non-traditional genealogy research, and then identify some resources, and feel free, to, pipe in at any time. If there's something that you found that you're just really excited about, please share. And if you have a question, you can ask the question. I may or may not be able to answer it. I'm not the, I am not the proclaimed knower of all things about genealogy resources. I know some things, and I'm willing to share that. And I'm sure we've got other experts in the room, so if I can't answer it, one of you can assist us. And then I want you to be able to identify and customize those strategies for your personal use. So we'll talk about that a little bit in the end. So maybe something that we talked about kind of was something you never thought you could, thought of accessing before. So, so that's the way we'll end. Okay, so what is non-traditional genealogy research? Seeking ancestral ties via resources that are not considered standard. And then also using the standard resources, but obtaining information that is not typically sought through those standard ways. So it almost sounds like a trick, doesn't it? But it's amazing what you can glean from some of those standard genealogy resources that you may not have even thought to capture when you were looking at them. So we'll talk about that a little bit too. So this is a copy of, as we all know, a census. And it, you know, it's probably hard to see that unless you're sitting right up front, unless you have really good eyesight. But typically what we get off of a census record is what? Now, what do we typically collect? We typically collect the family relationships, right? You know, the head of the household, the spouse, you know, the relationship of those who are, those to the head of the household. We also will get the age, we'll get the gender, we'll get the race, ethnicity. But if we go all the way across, there's a lot more information that we can get. One of the things that is really interesting is on some of the census records, it will tell you if this is the first marriage, you know, if the head of the household or individuals are divorced, if there are children, how many children were there at any one point and how many are still living. So that will give you the idea that this particular census record will not include every child. And then you said occupation. It'll have occupation. It'll have whether or not you're a homeowner or renting. It'll have where your parents were born. So it'll have where you were born, but also where your parents were born. So that information, if you collect all of that, can help you link to other ancestors. It also gives you a lot more information about the individuals, you know, like occupation. One of the things that I found in my family, there were a lot of teachers and preachers. So all my life I wanted to be a teacher. And what was very interesting, we were a part of that great migration from the south to the north. You know, my father came looking for gainful employment. Then once he got it, he sent back for us, and then we moved up there. Well, my mother went to work for the U.S. Navy. She first started in the clerical position, and then she went on to be a purchasing agent, purchasing buyer for the Navy. What I did not know was that her first profession was school teacher. When she moved to, you know, when we moved from Arkansas to Michigan, she did not have a teaching credential for Michigan, so she could not teach there. She had it for Arkansas. So she changed occupations. Now, as I go back and look at other family members, I see a lot more who, you know, were also teachers. So it's kind of exciting to see that something that's a passion for you was also a passion for a lot of your ancestors. And it really makes them come alive. And what's really interesting is, you know, now we've got all these different shows on genealogy. You know, like, who do you think you are? And in '98, when we had our family reunion, one of the things that I did was videotaped the majority of our reunion, particularly all of the presentations on the different branches of our family. And at the Allen County Public Library, they have a access TV station. And if you use their equipment to videotape, then they will show what you videotaped on their TV station. Well, I wanted to do it so that I could have copies for my family, and I didn't care if they showed it on TV or not, and nobody was doing it back then, back in '98. And what I found out was a lot of my friends were watching it, and they would say, wow, your family, that's really interesting. And I'm thinking, who would care if it's not their family? But as we know now, it's very interesting. And you find things that are similar to, your family and your ancestors when you're listening to the stories of others. So when you get started, and all of you probably did this, is you want to gather all the information that is already known, all the records. Make sure you get those pictures. The pictures are real important. And it used to be hard to get pictures from family members, right? Because they didn't want to give up those pictures because they thought they might not get them back. And in many cases, they probably didn't get them back. But now you can take your cell phone and take a picture of the picture. So they don't have to, they don't have to give it to you. Or if you have one of those portable scanners, you can also scan it. So it's so much easier to take pictures now than it's ever been. So all the documents, all the old Bibles, and what I did was take pictures of the pages in the Bible that had the birth dates of my grandmother and her siblings and her parents, and the marriage dates and the death dates. So a lot of that information was very difficult to get back at that time, but it's a lot easier now. But if it's a common name, sometimes it's still difficult for you to make sure that that's your relative. So you want to interview family members and friends, and I put in here friends because family members are sometimes skeptical, right? They don't want to talk to you. Who are you? And what are you going to do with this information? And they don't want you to talk about what they might perceive as a skeleton in the closet. And their friends and neighbors are much more likely to tell you those stories that, they're a little bit reluctant to tell you. I had a cousin, she's deceased now. She lived to be 102. And when she was in her 90s, I would interview her and get information, and so I got information about her siblings. I came back, and this was in Arkansas, I came back to Fort Wayne, and I was able to look up the information. She left out 2 sisters and 1 brother. So when I went back again to Arkansas, like a year or 2 later, I showed her the family tree, and she said, how did you get those names? I can give those to you. And so one of the things we know, we have to double check, right? Check, double check. Write down everything you learned and begin completing, start with your family tree chart first and, then move on from there.
You were talking about leaving people out. Well, even in published things, there are names that are left out.
Absolutely.
Because I checked my family history, they have a book in Mary, and I went down there, and the numbers didn't add up. There were 1 fewer boys in that list
Right.
than I knew that there were. Well, come to find out, when they went out there to talk about it, the father had disowned that boy, he left him completely out of the family history, so I had to find him a different way.
Absolutely, that happens.
So you have to recheck that stuff too.
That's why history is his story and her story. And that's why it's so important for you to give your account of it. So the next steps is focus your family history search on a specific surname. It's real easy to jump around, right? But if you focus just on one surname at a time, that really helps. Utilize library, family history center, and genealogy resources. So where's the family history center in Muncie, Indiana? Anybody know?
I thought it was across the street. We used to have a genealogy.
Well, the genealogy center is here, but family history center is on a different street. It's connected with the, yes, the LDS church. And if, Latter-day Saints. At the Family History Center, they have access to maybe all of the databases that you would get to at Salt Lake, in Salt Lake City. However, it depends on the Family History Center. Some of them may not have everything, but they'll have access to a lot of things. Also, the Genealogy Center here has access to a lot of databases as well. But the Family History Center is different than the Genealogy Center. Then connect with, how about the East Central Indiana Genealogy Alliance? Because you live here. Who's the president? Back here. She's the president. So connect with her, and also connect with societies and alliances where your ancestors were. And one of the things you'll find is that they may have already researched your surnames. One of the things I found, I connected with the Genealogy Society in little town that I'm from, in Arkansas. Right now it's probably about 9,000 people, very small. So it actually encompassed 2 counties because it's, both of the counties are really small. And the president at that time, he was in the Genealogy Center at the little bitty library, which had a little room, it's not even maybe about as big as this room here, but of genealogy resources. And I started talking with him, and I told him who I was researching, and it turned out that one of his ancestors lived in the household of my second great grandfather that I told you about earlier. How cool is that? But he had done a lot of research on one of the surnames in my family, and so he was able to point me to a lot of different types of information, make it easier for me. Explore the internet for ancestral leads, and we'll talk a little bit more about how you can do that. But connect with others via query files and online forums. And what's a query file?
Yeah.
Yes, you had it right. Go ahead.
We have a quarterly newsletter, and we put out queries for people for free. So if you ever want to send us your query, we'll add it to our newsletter.
Yeah. And what you do is you identify the surname, the person's name, the oldest ancestor that you can think of, and where they lived. And that will help you to be able to connect with others who might be doing research. So there's query files on different databases probably in every state, and they're usually connected with a genealogy alliance or a society or a history society. And online forums, the same type of thing. There are online forums on Ancestry.com. There are online forums on just about any of those types of databases. And here's just a few of the pedigree databases. Many of you probably already know about these. There's advantages and disadvantages to all of them. And it's just up to you which one you like the best. I don't recommend one over the other. I happen to use Ancestry.com because I started out with Family Tree Maker and then started using Ancestry.com, and then they bought out Family Tree Maker, so I wound up uploading my, family tree on their cloud, which I really like, so I can access it anywhere, but now, everybody does that, so it wasn't as unique, it's no longer as unique as it was at the time that I did it. Anybody else have a favorite, or, you were saying you used something different, right?
I've been using Family Search,
Family Search.
and it can drive me crazy because other people have the ability to go in and edit. And actually, the LDS Family Search people have editors that edit all kinds of stuff all the time.
Oh, no.
So you may go in and find something that you look at, but not everything you're seeing is your own tree.
Mhm.
It's other people's trees, it's sort of like one little tree kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so you'll find things that people will have edited, or they'll see something you did, and you're going, no, that's not right.
I wouldn't
Or
like that.
Yeah, but it will build a tree for you real quickly
Yeah.
if the stuff is there. And I find myself using both. I'll be looking at one to try to sort myself through something, and then change something in Ancestry maybe.
Oh,
Yeah.
so you use both of them,
Mhm.
great. Yeah. Yeah, with Ancestry, you can make your tree private, or if you wanna make it public, you can make it public, but the only thing they can see are the people who are deceased. They cannot see the names of people who are still living. Yes.
I use Reads Magic,
Mhm.
and the thing that I like about it is it will have little like qualified people, and it will show me links like in, Family Search, and Ancestry, and My Family, Wonderful Tree. So, I mean, it gives you, so you can click on that and figure out, well, what kind of helps. So it's kind of like a little leaf in Ancestry.
And here are other online resources that will provide you with different types of information. Heritage Quest Online requires a subscription, but it's free. I know it's free at the Allen County Public Library. Is it free here too?
We used to subscribe to it, but, since I think ProQuest acquired it, most of it is on Ancestry now, so we dropped Heritage Quest and kept Ancestry.
Yeah.
But some libraries only have Heritage Quest and not Ancestry, so ours has the Ancestry.
Yes, that's one of the things too, is they keep, acquiring each other. So something that was called one thing at one point may be called something different. And then, and that's one of the things, Social Security Death Index, you remember when it was standalone? You would go to SSDI or something like that in order to get it, and now you just go through Ancestry.com. Cindy's list is, oh my gosh. Yes, you'll be in there forever. But it just has a plethora of resources and different things that you can look at, just to find out more information. And I used to subscribe weekly to Treasure Maps, this last one I'm on here. And when I first started out, it was extremely helpful because it gave you tidbits that you wouldn't ordinarily know about. So you can just go to the website and it's free, and look at it, or you can subscribe to the newsletter and you get the weekly tidbits. So here are some of the non-traditional resources. Death records, and you can, come about death records in a lot of different ways. There are death indexes by counties, there's obituaries, there's death notices. So there's a lot of different ways that you can find death records, and even the death certificate gives you a lot of information. What can you find out on the death certificate?
Parents,
Next to kin.
Parents, yes, next of kin,
Cause of death.
or
Cause of death.
cause of death, and also if there was a, what do they call it, prevailing illness, so something that probably caused what they actually died from. And
place of burial.
yes, Well, maybe,
Sometimes.
sometimes,
Yes, they have funeral home, but not always a burial.
right, yeah.
You get the family doctor that also may have treated family members.
Right, the family doctor. One of the things that I found when I started looking at death certificates was the cause of death and the other health conditions. And I started collecting those. And, at that time, Family Tree Maker had, where you can include illnesses or health conditions as well as cause of death. And so what I created is what they now call a family health history. And so I did my tree of my ancestors and printed out on there the cause of death and the health issues and gave that to my doctor. And that's very useful information because they will ask you this information. And usually when you go to the doctor, you're sick. You're not in the best frame of mind to remember all of that information. But if you've already given it to them, you can just, have them make a copy or bring a copy with you. Account books, ledgers, that will have information about if someone borrowed money or paid a particular bill or, different types of information.
And
It'll also have
where would you
addresses.
have access to that?
This is where you look at, like your historical societies or your local genealogy site to see if they've collected that. Now, some of this information is in like the Yalma County Public Library, and so you have to, in many cases, go to a local site to see if that's been collected. Now, if there's a company that's been around for that long, they may still have those old records. So, it may be possible to do it in those kind of ways. A lot of this information is being digitized now, so making it easy for you to access. Baby books. With your baby books, it says a lot, doesn't it? Tells you first word, the first time they walked, and who did they visit, and Aunt Jane and Uncle John, and pictures. What usually happens when someone dies, the family members that are left ditch a lot of stuff, right? Because it's not important to them. And so, if you can get access to the family member that really collected a lot of pictures before they died, it's, it can be just a wonderful resource. Land deeds, public records, and wills. Okay, my second great grandfather on my father's side. I forgot when he was born, but it was early 1800s. And he was a slave. So I didn't see him in the census records before 1870. But he left a will. And in his will, he left different things to different family members. And he identified who those family members were. So, so I was able to connect more dots because of that will. I was even able to identify, like he left money to a grandson of his daughter, so, and with land deeds, one of the things that's real interesting, if you follow the ownership, you can find out who owned it before. Some of the land that my family members, my ancestors owned, originally, was owned by the slave owners. Public records, like, lawsuits, and that's really interesting because sometimes you find one relative will have sued another relative. And so it gives you a lot of information, and, you even get the transcripts, and you can find out a lot about how they thought and how they felt about something. Historical social events. What's a social event that?
Wedding.
A wedding's a social event, yes.
Reunions.
reunions. How about debutante balls? Those books that they put out for those social events will have the names of the debutantes, the names of their family members. So, a lot of useful information. And we're gonna talk a little more about the syndicy research. Other sources, eBay. Sometimes you find a very thoughtful person who may have even collected pictures out of the trash because somebody wants these or they're valuable to someone, and they may have them on eBay. And individuals have found, old rings, different documents that were valuable to them, but not necessarily valuable to the person who discarded it. We'll talk more about academic, of course, newspapers. We're getting more newspapers digitized, really interesting what's in the newspapers. Even in this area, the Indianapolis newspaper may print back in the early 1900s and the late 1800s, information about what was going on in Muncie, about what was going on in Fort Wayne. And some of the information that they print, you just would not believe it. It's like, John's wife, Jane, left him for the milkman. And they left and went to New York. Just all kinds of information that, would never make it to the papers today, but just, more like gossip. And then letters. Some people keep old letters. I used to keep old letters, and I had one of my aunts, she used to write me very long letters. And then when she died, I gave the letters to her children, my first cousins, because that was something that would be valuable to them, to see that side of her. You see your mother as your mother, but you don't see your mother as interacting with other people. And then other types of documents. So death records, cemetery records. A lot of times, particularly in small towns, these records may be recorded or digitized by volunteers with genealogy societies and digitized, and maybe even in publications like I talked about the index, the census index, well, there's also death indexes, and there's a book of it. And so there's certain cemeteries in this little small town I'm from that were family cemeteries. The Jones Cemetery, some of my relatives were buried in. The Haddon Cemetery, the Mount Hope Cemetery. And so I was able to find a lot of this information in Fort Wayne. Now, another thing you want to do too is, go to the cemetery. And it used to be you would take that special kind of paper and, like try to write it on there in order to get the reading onto your little piece of paper. Well, I went through the cemetery and videotaped all the headstones that I thought were my family members. And I came back to Fort Wayne to the Genealogy Center and then looked at census records to see if they were really connected to me. That helped me immensely. Sometimes cemetery records are recorded by college students in a research project. So you may want to check at colleges in their research archives. Unmarked graves may be maintained by church staff. So there may be someone who's kept a record and it's located in the church. It may not be in the library, it may not be somewhere else, of all those individuals who have unmarked graves. Now, I was lucky, and I found this out from the the president of the Genealogy Society, there were casket sale records in Arkansas, in the small town where I was from. There was only one casket maker, and it's called Proctor. And the information that was on there included the name, the race, the cause of death, the date of death, location of death, the purchaser's name and relationship to the deceased. A wealth of information.
How far back did it go?
They went back to probably the late 1800s. They go way, way back. But still, that's really good, because particularly if somebody died as a baby, that would be between two censuses, and you wouldn't get that information at all. Obituaries in newspapers, funeral homes, and you can, like, one of the things I try to do, if I can't make it to the funeral of a family member, I'll ask a relative to send me an obituary. If they won't send it, I contact the funeral home, and usually they will send it to you. Now, a lot of times today, people don't go through the funeral home to do their obituary, they do their own. So you may have to look at the one that's in the newspaper or the one that's on the online website for the funeral home. But, and some churches, there are churches right here in Muncie, they have a library and they have a book, and it's all these obituaries of the members who have died. The genealogy libraries, of course, and then family members' homes. My cousin gave me this huge book of obituaries. She had just collected them all, but she said, well, since you're doing family research, I'm just gonna give it to you, because you're doing the research. Okay. This is one of the cemeteries, one of my family cemeteries here. And so we go beyond the gate and onto the headstones. Okay. And then this is a index to, and here's Good Hope Cemetery. This is one of the ones my family members, and then some of my family members are listed there. And we talked about this a little bit, about following the paper trail for the land deeds, court cases, and the wills. And then this is a copy of a deed where my second great grandfather homesteaded in Arkansas. A lot of people went to Arkansas. You live on the land for so many years, and then it becomes your land. So here's that record. And courthouses, I spent hours and hours in the courthouse in Arkansas. And how many of you have, almost lived in a courthouse? Yeah, we got a few people. Especially if you're in a small town, nobody else is back there. So you have all this access. And when I first started doing it, they would make all the copies I wanted for free. I couldn't believe it. Now, they charge 25 cents a copy. So I just take a picture. I don't have that many quarters.
Wayne County has them online if you go on Wayne.
Some of them have them online.
Right in there.
Yeah.
Pops right up.
Yeah.
Take it by phone and save the quarter.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It'll give you a
And then, I talked about social events and, pageants, debutante balls, those type of things. This is my daughter when she, went to the debutante ball. Expensive wedding dress for a teenager. I told her, that will be your wedding dress. Then high school and college yearbooks. And guess what? A lot of those are online now too. Any of you on classmates.com? You can actually pull up the yearbooks. And it'll tell you, like, if you put in a person's name, it'll tell you, and when they were in school, it'll tell you where. you know, where the picture is, and it'll take you right to that page. And they try to make it difficult for you to copy that, but there's still a way to copy it. Yes.
US Navy. There are tons of Navy cruise books on the web. One that I created is actually on the web.
Wow.
300 and some pages published out there now. And a lot of them would have individual pictures like mine did. It's on the USS America, individual pictures and identification of the people and the whole trip, the whole tour around the world, Vietnam, and all that.
And my aunt's husband was in the Navy in California, and they went to Alaska. They were stationed in Alaska for a while, and one of my cousins was actually born in Alaska, and so those passenger lists, the passenger list will have the names of everyone and the ages, and in some cases even where they were born. So I was able to pull up that record and give it to my cousin.
By the way, the Navy, where those are at, you have the ability to try to communicate with people on there.
Wow.
And leave a message.
Oh, that's wonderful.
They also have, if you know that one of your ancestors was in a specific battle, like, the Battle of the Coral Sea or what have you, they also have, interactive sites so that you can go in and ask questions of people, and they're very generous.
And then sports players, rosters, programs, special award lists, dissertations and theses. A lot of times you don't think to check those, but they will have personal and oral histories, information on families, cultures, academic disciplines, would be like anthropology, social work, history, education, those types.
Along with that, some colleges also keep, in the education department, keep copies of the thesis. And you can go in and you can actually touch the pieces of paper and.
Ball State does that. Yeah, have hard copies of the dissertations and the thesis. My dissertation is in the library.
They sometimes they put them on, some of them come online too.
Right.
Google Scholar or something like that.
Some of the universities put all of their dissertations and theses online. Ball State hasn't done that yet, but.
Because I know my thesis is on Google Scholar, and that's how they do it where I went. But I was gonna make a comment about the oral histories. We have the ability to create those now. I, interviewed I took a women in history class, and because of that, there were some questions that I put together. But I did an oral history on my husband's father, on his mother, on his aunt that just passed away recently.
Oh my gosh.
And another aunt through her daughter, and I actually got a reminder to call my aunt, who's getting older. I have two that I want to do it. And I recorded them and then gave them and the families copies.
Wonderful.
It's something, it's a way to get information that you might not have otherwise.
Yeah. That's so important to do that while they're still living. Okay, we talked about eBay sources. Some of the things that you might find on here. And this is a World War II ration scale, so it will have information here. It's got the address. Public school records. That has very useful information. A lot of times they'll have parents' names. Yes.
We just, here at Hudson Public Library, actually, Hudson Community Schools didn't have room to store their records anymore, so we are now housing them here, so that's something we're excited about, to have some people going all the way back to 1800s, some of Hudson Community School records, and it has the students' names and dates and things like that, so.
You have ability to digitize all that.
maybe for the volunteer time.
Volunteer. Yeah, I know Allen County Public Library has a high-speed scanner, and they digitize a lot of things.
Yeah, I have a question. How do you check that? How do you trace people like they move a lot? How can you follow them and get this kind of information when you have no idea where they went and when they went there?
The way I do it is I have my family tree on ancestry.com. And so I have, like their birthday, who they're married to, who their family members are. And it brings up the different city directories. So I can trace where they've moved. I can trace when someone who, like in my family, they maybe were in Arkansas, then they moved to Oklahoma, then they moved to Wisconsin.
And that's the way my family, I just have an awful time following them.
Yeah, with Ancestry.com, if it's an unusual name, that helps it first. But the more information you get about that individual, then you get those types of leaves, as they say, you get those hits. So you have to put all that information in. You put in family members, parents, you put in the siblings, you put in, their children, their spouses. Okay, who wants to find some living relatives? Anybody? Nobody wants to find living relatives, so you can just pass it by? Any hands for living? There's always a living relative you wanna find.
My sister and I'm from South Bend area, but my sister and I knew we were gonna be in Marion for a weekend. I went through the Marion phone book, and I found everybody that had the same family name, and we sent out postcards. If you are related to so-and-so in this family, meet us at, and when we would be there, and we didn't have a real big showing, but we got some family history that we wouldn't have otherwise.
Yeah, so she found out how to do it. They've got the online, phone directories. Now, the problem now is most people are going to cell phones, so they're getting rid of their landlines, and it's a little bit more difficult to track them down unless they, log their cell phone number. Who's gonna do that? Not many people do that. But,
There is an alternative to that, go on Facebook, because I reconnected with family
Social
members in
media.
Arkansas that I
yes.
have not contacted in 45 years.
Where in Arkansas?
Some of them are, trying to remember,
That's where I'm from, I'm from South Central.
my grandmother was from that area.
El Dorado.
Hot Springs,
Hot Springs. okay.
Hot Springs, Little Rock, and then a little further north,
Okay.
Dover.
Yeah, social media is phenomenal. We have a it's called, family reunion, with our name on it. And one of my cousin's children, who's of course adult now, created it. And what we do is close, it's just 2 family members, and we're able to add family members. So if you don't know all the family members, somebody else can add. I've added a lot of names. And then what I do is I post, I post things that I do, or, my daughter does, anything that I know about another family member. If someone dies, I'll post it there. So it's a real good way to kind of increase interest in knowing about the family. And People Finder websites. There's actually one called peoplefinder.com. One of my favorites is Veromi.net. And Veromi.net, all you need is the name of the person. It helps if you know the approximate age and one of the places that they live. And then it will bring up people who either lived in that household with them or people they're related to that lived in the same city. And it will also list different places that person lived. Yes.
What was the name of that website you just said?
Veromi.net. Veromi, VEROMI.net. So I'm usually the person they call when they wanna find somebody. If I don't know where they live, usually I can use one of those people finder websites and find them. Yes.
I wanted to find my dad's family. Was adopted, so I wanted to find his loved one. And I wrote to the little local newspaper and gave his name, the name of the family. And if anybody knew him, and I got the letters with the lady.
Oh my gosh, how wonderful.
And I kept the letters.
Yeah.
Some of them were right on and others were
Right, yeah.
same name but not same.
And you can do that for a small town.
Yeah.
You know, because everybody knows everybody in a small town. But all of these different ways, you know, I've actually used all of those. So, you know, you may not find who you're looking for on one, but don't give up, try another. Okay, we all know this probably, but most of us know this. If you're doing ancestral research, you're looking at yourself, your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, right? So look how many people you get at the top. If you do descendancy research, you're looking at, you know, going to your oldest relatives, so like, you know, me and my second great-grandparent. And then their spouse, you know, the spouse, their children, the spouses of their children, all of those children, the spouses of those children. So you get so much more information. So you may not be able to find something on your relative, but you may be able to find something on a spouse of your relative. Who really is your relative? Well, it's not blood, but.
Sometimes working down one little leg will get you something that will help you go back the other way.
Absolutely. Yeah, because, you know, like if I can't find something, let's say, if I can't find something on John, then I'd go over to like maybe Todd and Marie, Ruth and Ted, and I may be able to find more stuff because they may not have moved as much. And so the more that I plug in to my family tree on Ancestry.com, then I'll get back to getting leads on John. So doing the same kind of thing that we talked about before, select a member, collect that previous research, seek out other sources. We talked about all those. This is my family on my mom's side. So the man and the woman, the man seated and the woman in the middle are my great-grandparents. And the woman in between them is their daughter, and the other man seated is her husband. You know, so that's my mother's mother and my mother's father. And he is actually, I think it's 4 years older than her mother. He was about 20, 21 years older than she was. Now, today, you might not blink, but can you think back in the early 1900s? That was, I mean, people didn't live as long. And so my aunt asked, she said, "Mother, why would you marry a man so old?" And she said, "I married him because I loved him, and he was quite a catch." He was actually, there was a small kind of 2-room school in this, you know, small section of this small city. And he was the, what would you call it? Kind of like a board president, so to speak, kind of in that role. And she was the teacher of the teachers. So they worked at the same, you know, in the same environment, met each other, fell in love. Now, he had kids almost her age. So she wound up, you know, marrying a man who's got kids that are almost as old as she is. And Well, not quite as old as she is, but, you know, really close. But, and then, his first wife died when the baby was really young, so she was taking care of like a toddler. And so between the two wives, there were 19 children. Now, on the left is my great-grandparents' daughter. That's their son up there. And next to my grandmother, that's the youngest, that's Lena. My grandmother was Una. And let's see, that's R.O., he was the husband of Ellery, when they called her Kitty. And she, on this side, that's Pauline, and I think she was married to Eddie. So, this picture was taken in the 1940s. I wasn't born then, but I was very lucky to get a copy of this picture from a family member. So when people know you're researching family, they will usually try to help you out, give you information, give you pictures. And this is the picture with the, you know, with the cap on, that's me, with my mother and my father. And then to the left of my mother, that's her parents that were in the other picture. And then all the way to the left is my father's parents. And then up at the top are my grandmother, my paternal grandmother's parents. So, we talk about picture telling, you know, giving you 1,000 words. Now, my grandfather, one in the middle, he was born in 1870, born a long, long time ago. So it's kind of hard to get too much further back from him, other than the fact that, you know, his lineage goes back through the slave owners. And so I've got, I think I've gotten back into the 1700s with that. Now this is my daughter and my sister's son. They were born 6 months apart. So that first picture, he's 3 months old. And then she's 9 months old. The second picture on the right, she's 15 months old and he's 9 months old. Now look, first he's smaller, now he's taller. And so whenever they're in, you know, together, I always take a picture of them together. And I do the same thing with my sister and I. There's only 2 of us. Whenever we're together, we take a picture. So I have like a collage of pictures of us. And so that's a way to, you know, share your family history. Take, you know, pictures, you know, through time. And, you know, embarrass your kids. The pictures of, and this up here, my mother dressed them alike. She bought them those 2 outfits so that they almost look like twins in the picture. Okay. And then this is, whenever I go back to California, I always try to get family members together and we go out to eat and make sure we get a picture. So keep the family alive. And most of those are my first cousins. So write your own history. You know, who's gonna tell your history? Who's gonna tell your story? Nobody can tell it better than you can, right? So, you know, you're doing all this collecting everybody else's history, so you need to, you know, do your own as well. So different things that you can do. Keep a journal, look at letters you've written or cards you received. You know, my husband, he gives me, for my birthday, he usually gives me 2 cards. A funny card and a, you know, romantic card. And so each year I keep those cards in, you know, and I have them in a binder, and I gotta figure out something to do with these cards. And I got one funny card for him one year, and it said, happy birthday to the king of the castle. And he said, well, it's about time you recognize. And then he opens it up and it says, from the power behind the throne. Okay, I did a presentation a while back about hair. you know, and the importance of hair. And so what I did was collected pictures of different individuals with different hairstyles throughout the year. And so, you know, the top two are the previous first lady. Then we've got, you know who this one, next to the bottom? Aretha Franklin, and at the bottom, Diana Ross, yeah. So, you know, like through the years, their hairstyles change. So I decided to do one on me, so the next picture you see will be me. I usually get a real laugh out of this one, okay? So involve your extended family. You know, when you share the history, I think you were saying, you got involved, you know, you got excited about it because you went to a family reunion where they had shared the history. So if you share what you know, you will find other people who are interested and can help you with this. So share your research with all your family members.
When you do your oral history, double check your facts with other family members, because my mother and I went, my mother's from Kentucky, and we went down to talk to my grandmother, and somebody had said something about my grandmother was married twice. She'd been married once before my mother's father. And my mom said she didn't know that. Well, I said, well, I knew that. And she said, well, how'd you know that? She said, because I asked Aunt Jim's. But what had happened is it was old news by the time she got born.
Right.
And nobody talked about it. It wasn't a secret. There was just nobody talked about it.
Exactly.
And so when it came, you know, time to have her oral story, if I hadn't checked with other members and found out what was going on,
You would have missed out on
we would have
her.
missed out on that.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is so important, double check, triple check. Ask for help, ask family to assist in conducting research, and do it different ways. You know, what about family folklore or platitudes? We have a whole bunch of them. And so we share those at the family reunion. Like, my sister was running through my grandmother's house with a broom, chasing after one of my cousins, and she says, "Don't hit him with the broom, don't hit him with the broom, it'll be bad luck." And I'm thinking, well, wouldn't it be don't hit him with the broom because she might hurt him? And two people combing somebody's hair at the same time, the youngest will die. And, there's just so many of those things, so many. Put your purse on the floor, you'll never have any money. Any of you got one? Yeah.
You don't want to throw a hat on bed.
Okay, you don't wanna throw a hat on the bed, what would
That's
happen?
bad luck.
Bad luck.
Bad luck.
Yeah, don't throw a hat on the bed.
And one of our favorite modern ones is don't wipe off the grape jelly. Because if you wipe the grape jelly off, you'll have a clean spot. And then you see how dirty the wall is, then you gotta clean the wall. And then you gotta clean the windows. So whenever anybody's starting to get into that, you know it's gonna lead somewhere else. Just don't wipe the grape jelly.
Yeah, don't wipe it off. And create your own family website, or family newsletter. And this is what you were talking about just a minute ago. Verify your resources. It's not, oral history is not always accurate. Written documents are not always accurate. Census records are not always accurate. So you want to double check, triple check, and sometimes you got 3 different, you know, dates or versions, and so you just list where you got them all. I got this one here, I got this one there.
Don't
You may
trust
not know
other
which is
people's
right.
trees either.
Oh, you can't trust somebody else's tree. One of the things that I found on Ancestry is that a whole lot of the trees that are on there now that come up as a leaf, they copied everything from my tree. They're not telling me anything that I don't already know.
It's the same with family search, because it's just people that are putting information
Right.
on there, and it doesn't mean necessarily. It's like when we used to use the IGI, it was the same thing, we were taking information from people.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, you have to be really careful with that. So share what you've learned, different ways to do it, family reunions, newsletters, videotape. I told you about why I videotaped it. People still, 20 years have passed and they're still showing that and people are still commenting on it. Create a play and reenact a special event. Family website, write an article for Genealogy Journal. You know, how are we gonna maintain history if you're not writing it down and publishing it? So, very important to do that. So here we are at the end, and I'm challenging you guys to try either accessing some of the websites presented or search for a living relative. And here's one, anywho.com is one. I told you, Verami.net, peoplefinder.com, and enjoy the ancestral journey. Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Dr. King? We've got minutes in.
I have one question, about your grandfather, you said you're born in 1870.
Uh-huh.
Were you able to trace any more, beyond him, like through the family?
Yeah, on that side is my grandfather, then my great grandfather, and he was the son of the slave owner. And then I have the slave owner's parents, and then I think I have the slave owner's grandparents also.
Okay, were you able to trace it back to like a ship manifest? I know several years ago, Emory University was able to digitize a lot of the slave ship manifest in Kenya and on the eastern coast.
I
And the
haven't-
insurance records
I
and
haven't
all of
looked
those, have you been able to?
at the slave manifest, but they were in South Carolina. And so that's probably where they came in from Africa, in South Carolina. Then they moved, you know, the slave owner moved to Mississippi and then to Arkansas. And they moved there probably for the homesteading. And so I haven't gotten around to looking at you know, like those manifests yet. But, you know, like I said, you know, there's more stuff digitized every day and it makes it a lot easier. Now, one of my cousins, her mother's name was Clotie, is Chlotile, and there was a slave ship by that name.
The King in Alabama.
So,
Yeah.
But she hasn't traced it back, you know, to see if her ancestors were on that ship. Yes.
Alabama was able to find our relatives. My grandfather's, my great-great-grandfather's part of the family of the Alabama Church. We were able to trace that back, and we were able to find the census. We could not find any birth records because at that time, there was a white house and a black house. And all the black birth records, including my grandmother, who was born in 1915, and her siblings who were born in the 1900s and before into the 1800s, all the birth records were burned. Their death records were burned. There's no records of them at all. And even though I know that she lived and who she was because we met her.
But here into the 1900s, were they in the census records?
Yes, they are in a sense, I have copies of it, I have a whole book of it that we put together for the family reunion. But there are birth records and death records and baptism records and things that were missing. Yeah.
Now,
We
were
have
these
pieces of
the state records or the county records from that city where she was from?
These are actually from that, city and some are from the state.
Okay, because if they, you know, if the location where they were burned at the city, they may reside at the state
The
level.
state didn't have it.
Oh.
Yeah. She needed my grandmother needed it to register to vote, and they did something to legalize her so
Yeah.
that she could vote. But there was no records to prove who she was.
And we also talked a little bit about newspapers.
Yeah.
Sometimes that information would have been in the
They told us at
newspaper.
that time in Alabama, they didn't publish,
The blackbirds.
yeah.
Okay.
It's like some states didn't even issue birth certificates.
Yeah.
Arkansas didn't, back in the early 1900s, some of them. My mother never had a birth certificate. My father had one that was recreated. And before.
Yeah, I was wondering how you can recruit that. A lot of my people on my mother's side are from Kentucky. During the Civil War, there was an awful lot of destruction when the courthouses were all going down and then they just went up in flames. And how do you get around that kind of non-information? I mean, where can you look other than that for that kind of information?
If someone kept the Bible, you know, the records in the Bible, they may be there.
I mean, that would be something else.
Federal records too, don't you think like the records of some of the soldiers, the pension records, that they're digitized?
It's online.
Some of those.
Yeah, some of the men that were in the service, I've been able to deal with that.
And it'll have birthday on it.
But I can't go back any farther than my grandmother. I mean, I have world, but that, you know what that's worth too.
Well, I pay,
But wait, just a minute, because she's had her hand up like a
That's
long
okay, that's
time.
okay. I found out some of my relatives are from Kentucky, Providence. A lot of places that you call, you need to always ask, we actually ended up going there. You need to know whether it's the colored book or the, you know, or the white book.
Right.
So sometimes you just don't know, and they don't know what to look for. If you call them or ask for information, they may send you more information.
Yeah.
You did not give them that information as to what book it was in. But a big situation, big problem I have is finding any type of photos of African Americans in any of the newspapers. Is there any other resources that you know of where you might be able to find, maybe if you found a death record, a photo of that person? That's
It
my
would
question.
probably be a personal collection, like, I have a picture of the schoolhouse that I was telling you about from the 1930s. And my mother was, she was probably about, what would she have been? She was born in 26, so she might have been 19 years old at the time of that picture. And of course, I didn't know hardly anybody in the pictures because, you know, I know my mother as an adult now, what she looked like as a child, but I had an aunt and several other relatives who helped me to name every single person in that picture. So it's a matter of being able to connect either with other family members who might be collectors or friends of family members who might have been collectors.
It's also, I was gonna say, it's also more rare to find it, but you can also check school yearbooks sometimes. You know, I see we have, lots of schools right where even back to the 1800s, so some of the yearbooks have pictures of African Americans also. So depending on how the school system was, or you're researching, local library might have a collection of yearbooks.
Back then they were segregated, were you?
Right.
School reunions are good.
Yes.
We did that at my last reunion.
I go every 2 years back to Kansas, and they have a school reunion. And I happened to be in town when they were having a reunion one year, and a bunch of my relatives from all over the country were there. And, I finally decided, I said, this is a good way, because, you know, it's hard to get folks to come to family reunions, and it's hard to get them to even plan one. But every 2 years, I can see relatives that live in California and New York, you know, all over the country that, you know, I probably wouldn't get a chance to see any other time. So, you can see if there are any, school reunions that are going on in the areas where Black schools. And there might be people who, you know, collected or kept in their book or, you know, those kinds of things. And I got one of the old yearbooks too, here, you know, like, my father went to that school and, you know, one of my cousins who's still living, he was the principal at that school, and then he was also the chair of the Department of Psychology at, Arkansas A&M, which became what was it called now? University of Arkansas Pine Bluff. You know, and it was originally called Normal Branch School, College.
well, I was just gonna say, well, I go, if you look at sometimes for something you wanna pay for it, you can send away for an application for Social Security, and it's like $35, it's not cheap. And the worst part about it is it takes months to get it. But, you know, to file for Social Security, you had to list your parents
Right.
and where they're from.
Mhm.
And so, it helped me on one side of my family. I was searching, I was at a roadblock, totally at a roadblock. And once I got that Social Security application, my great-grandfather applied for it the first year Social Security came out. So, I looked out there and it just opened up the whole screen.
And the Social Security death index is really good too, because it gives you date of birth and date of death and where.
We'll just take the last few questions here.
It's not a question, I have two websites, the one I'm not real sure of, I think it's mypersonaljournal.com, which you can go in and fill in all the information in there, and it gives you a living record of your life story. The other one, I'm surprised you didn't mention, is Find a Grave. Over the last several years,
I don't know why it
they
didn't.
have linked all these different generations,
Oh
and
my
if you
gosh.
register for an account, it's all free, you can go in and you know that this person was married to this one, you can link them together by their ID numbers.
I
And there's
use
just a
it
wealth
all
of
the
pictures and
time.
information there.
I don't know why I forgot to put it in my presentation, but I was shocked to see that little, you know, the Jones Cemetery where a lot of my family members are buried. A volunteer had gone and recorded almost all of those. I don't think there's even 200 graves there. And I was just shocked when I came across it. This, I think it's been well over 10 years. And now, my gosh, findthegrave.com, so many more records are out there. It's just phenomenal. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Thank you.
if you would ever think about this, but in one of our history classes, that I used, the Library of Congress. And in the Library of Congress, there's so much information regarding the slavery era. They even have recordings where they did visual interviews with, Cyrus Slade. And there's just a wealth of information there, and that might be a
Yeah,
resource
the
also.
WPA project, when the government was putting people back to work, they went down and did oral stories on a lot of ex-slaves. And at first, those tapes, you could hardly even make them out, but when they digitized it, it's much clearer. And, you can actually access those online. I think they'll come up on YouTube. And you can, I think it's just called Slave Narrative. And it's from, you know, like different cities and states in the South. And
It's really interesting.
They
And,
are.
I mean, there's so much information in there that you can bring out of it.
Well, I just want to say thank you again to Dr. Kane for. Real quick before we go, we did give out some little tickets for a couple of door prizes. If you want to pull those tickets out now. We have 2 door prizes tonight. The first one, and these are all donated for the Central Advanced Genealogy Alliance. It's 808253. Got it? All right, and so there's 2 books over here. You can take your pick of whichever one you'd like.
Now?
Yeah, go ahead. And our second winner, 808251. So you guys see everybody. And we had a free magazine exchange too. Even if you didn't bring a magazine, on the table directly outside the furniture, there's some free genealogy like magazines you're welcome to have. See what you like. So thank you all
I'm sorry. Well, you know, I want to talk to you.
Enjoy the program. Thank you so much. Are you the vice?
He's not related to you. Not in that way.